you will get frost in the wintertime.
Club president. Last week, Seattle hosted the All-Star game. That was really exciting. Did you know that this week is Taylor Swift week? Some of you know and some of you understand why, but this is why it's so important. Last week, we had a lot of guests in town and lots of hotel bookings. That doesn't compare to this week. Taylor Swift will be doing 52 shows in 20 cities, and the Department of Commerce thinks it's going to make $4.6 billion for all the host cities, not each, but total, which is a lot. 68,000 people each night in Lumen Field. Isn't that amazing? You can't find a hotel room, so if you have any friends visiting, don't try. And Airbnbs are going for $750 a night. So if you have any friends, they are staying on your couch this week, okay? So pretty darn exciting. Well, what we do each week is we start off with a song and an inspiration. So our song, Mary Maid singer and pianist today are Linda Ruff and Ryan Bunbury. And we have then Faith Ireland will give us an inspiration.
Today, we're singing George Gershwin's classic aria, Summertime. Gershwin relocated to the South in the 30s to soak up the jazz culture he loved, and then wrote America's first opera, Porgy and Bess, from which we are singing the aria, the opening aria, Summertime. So join me. In a minute. Summertime, and the living is easy. Where's our lyrics? Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your mama's good look. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing, and then you'll spread your wings and take to the sky. Until that morning, there is nothing can harm you. With that daddy and mommy stand by. With daddy and mommy stand by.
I'm Faith Ireland, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today, July the 19th. It's a special day because it is the 175th anniversary of the first Women's Rights Convention, which was held July 19th, 1848, Seneca Falls, New York. Also, July 19th is National Hot Dog Day. Today, we are going to hear about service. And I'd like to share a poem about that. This is called Twilight Reverie, Poet Unknown. At evening, when the sun has set, I want to know no vain regret, because some selfish thought or deed has caused another's heart to bleed. Let me so live each passing day that when the sun has slipped away, I may know I've shared the road and helped to carry another's load. Let me bring some ray of light to help another win his flight. I may know I've shared the road and helped another carry his load. Let me bring some ray of light to help another with his fight. To help the burden stand erect, let me remedy some small defect. Lord, make me strong, for this I've planned. Help me to lend that helping hand. For I have learned that he who does not give exists perhaps, but does not live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faith. That was inspiring and close to our hearts. And our music was awesome. Linda and Ryan, that was just beautiful. Thanks for that. And we'll have to practice that up so we can do it even louder next time. We now get to have new member introductions. Mary is covering for Joe Phillips today. So we have Mary Goldie coming up to introduce our two new members for corporate membership.
Thank you. All right, so it's my honor to introduce our two newest members, both of whom represent the Seattle Foundation. As you know, the Seattle Foundation enables philanthropists to maximize their impact in meeting our community's many needs, and we are happy to get this 2-for-1 deal from the foundation. First, we have Ingrid Chapman, who is the Senior Advisor in Gift Planning. Ingrid grew up in West Seattle and was always volunteering and trying to make a difference in the world. She attended Western Washington University, where she graduated with a degree in law, politics, and economics. Since graduation, she has taken on different philanthropy roles with a number of highly regarded nonprofits, most of the time in the healthcare arena. Over her career, these include Children's Hospital, Wellspring, St. Jude's, UW Medicine. Just 10 months ago, she joined the Seattle Foundation to assume her current role there. Outside of her professional career, Ingrid's priorities are her family. Her parents and siblings live here in Seattle, her 2 dogs, and running. She is preparing for your first marathon, is that right? Third marathon, which is coming up in San Francisco this weekend. Go Ingrid. And she has also completed 14 half marathons. So that's the scoop on Ingrid. And then we have Cindy Sherrick, who's the Director of Gift Planning and started that role in February. Cindy grew up in the Portland area and graduated from Oregon State with a degree in journalism and business. She started her career as a marketing manager for an architectural engineering firm, but thought a switch to nonprofit marketing might bring more work-life balance, which of course did not prove to be the case. And then she took a marketing communications role with Providence. Within a few years, though, she switched hats to fundraising and found that to be a much better match for her interest and her passion. After Providence, a brief stint with elder and adult day services, she joined the King County Library System, where she worked for 12 years before she joined Seattle Foundation. Working for the library system was really cool because she is an avid reader like myself, one who belongs to 3 book clubs. She also loves to cook and travel, and she and her husband, Tom, have a 28-year-old son, a 22-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old grandson, all of whom live locally. So please join me in welcoming our newest members, Cindy Sherrick and Ingrid Chapman from the Seattle Foundation.
We're going to try a little mic shift. Our experts tell us this will be better, and it is. Thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction, and we are just grateful to have two great representatives of the Seattle Foundation joining us, and we will have opportunities to learn from them and their expertise. We now have a Zoom host always that helps for the people that are coming in by Zoom, and Tabitha Kloss is our Zoom host, so keeping all those people engaged, and they also come up with some good question and answers for our main speakers. We have some guests here with us today, and I want to take a chance to have each of the guests stand up. And when we have all of the guests standing, we'll then give them our warm Rotary welcome. First, we have one that I know very well, Anna Given, my daughter. She is a prospective young leader in our city, and we hope to see her as a Rotarian sometime in the future. We did such a good job of making an impression on Dave Given, my husband, that he has an application already in for Rotary membership. So there he is. We have Bo Mitely from CBRE Investment Properties. He's a guest of Peter Wright. We have John Joyce, who is also with CBRE, and he is a guest of Peter Wright's. Thomas Bell is a guest of Jen Gladish, and he is with First Interstate Bank. We have Talia Branchmore and Sienna Branchmore, both granddaughters of Jim Moore, our member. So welcome all of these guests. So now we get to have Jesse Thomas, who is our immediate past treasurer, come introduce the short program. And he, for the last 2 years, has really kept our board in line and helped us update a lot of our financials. So we're grateful for his service, and also grateful for his love of the Rotary Boys and Girls Club, which is the topic of our short program. Jesse?
Thank you, Nancy. You know, it's funny, as I was walking down here today, I was trying to think of the last time I was on this podium, and Charlie, I'm looking at you because I think it was when you introduced me 5 years ago. So I don't know if Nancy's going to let you introduce her husband and daughter if they become members, because it feels like she should do that, but maybe you could as well. So I'm up here to be able, I'm really honored to be able to be here because I get to introduce Jared Gross and Kendrick Davis. And if you haven't met Jared yet, he's only been with Rotary for a little bit less than a year. And he's already chairing the Rotary Boys and Girls Club committee here at Rotary. I'm on the club advisory board, which is why I get to introduce him, thanks to Tom Hirsch introducing me to the club. And if you haven't met Jared yet, he's got so much energy and enthusiasm that I know is going to come through in this presentation. Like if I could describe it, I'd say, like, picture my 4-year-old son, if you gave him a marshmallow, blew up his bouncy house, and put on the Moana soundtrack all at the same time. Like, we're talking that level of energy. So I'm going to hand it over to Jared here shortly, and Kendrick Davis, who is the new area director, took over from Miss Patrick, who was in that role and did so well for so long. Very excited to have him up here as well. Please put your hands together for Jared. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. That was very, very humbling. I do appreciate that. So I'm here today to talk about the progress of the Rotary Boys and Girls Club Committee, and also the progress of the CAB, which is our County Advisory Board to the Rotary Club. If you could go, is there a next slide button? There, I did it. So I'd like to introduce Kendrick Davis. And, you know, we had a wonderful director in Miss Patrick. And we are so lucky to bring in somebody with a great heart, a wealth of knowledge, and great experience. I have known Kendrick personally since we attended Roosevelt High School together and played football on the same team. Henrik's done different things with the Boys and Girls Club for 11 years, and I'm quickly going to list some of that experience. These roles include teen coordinator at Emerald Valley Boys and Girls Club in Oregon, program director, then club director of Boys and Girls Club of King County, or Boys and Girls Club of Skagit County, branch manager, association director for hunger initiatives, and operations director. He is also just a wonderful and kind person that I know personally. So to bring this experience and this type of person, I just want to say, welcome, Kendrick Davis. We are very lucky to have him at the helm. The next quick update I'd like to give here is an update on the general state of the club. We're having a fantastic year. A lot of this is due to the resources that Rotary Seattle 4 has provided, both financially and through your service. I'd like to list the 5 grants that we have applied and gotten approved this year. We have a back to school supplies grant, which will help students comfortably get back to school. We have a grant for maintenance day. I'll tell you more about that later. Fantastic turnout, really great opportunity to clean and elevate the space. $10,000 Phil Smart Scholarship, is that correct? Yes. And then we're doing a director meal program because Kendrick's there after hours all the time, working crazy long weeks. We want to make sure that when he's working outside his business hours, he's taken care of. So those are the grants we got approved. We did also get great reception to our 2001 and 2022 grants. So I'm extremely proud of how we've been doing. From a scholarship and mentor perspective, that's my man, Jesse, but I'm going to talk about him for a second, okay? He is doing a great job. We have 9 scholars, 7 of which are returning, 2 of which are new. There's local impact with these scholars, as we have one that currently is returning to Seattle University, one that's returning to University of Washington, and we have a new scholar coming to University of Washington as well. We get $10,000 a year in budget. It used to only be able to go to new applicants. That rule has changed, and now we can spread it out across current scholars as well. This has been a very positive change, I believe, for the scholarship funding. From a mentorship perspective, I'm just lucky to see what they do. So Jesse actually meets on a bi-monthly basis with every single scholar. He ensures that all is well with their process as they move into college. Everything, study tips, adjusting to life on campus, learning how to maybe deal with a difficult roommate. Some of those hard questions, Jesse is there for them. Several Rotarians are currently and have been mentors. What's amazing about this program is you work with your mentee through their entire college career. So you get to see the growth of this individual as they begin and as they grow and excel. Most of our mentors still have current relationships with their mentees. So it's not just about the 4 years, it's creating long-lasting relationships. Thank you, Jesse, for doing that. I do have one more update, and that's service at the club. We have had just a phenomenal year for service. We're currently at above 190 hours of in-person service hours at the club. This is a good number for us. Maintenance day, we had 30 people out cleaning up the club for 3 hours. We have implemented an athletic volunteer program. This started with 2 people spending an hour or 2 at the gym. We've scaled it to 10. We had our first fully staffed basketball day of volunteers where we had volunteers for 8 hours at the club. That meant for 8 hours, someone got to take a load off. So we're going to continue those efforts. We're going to continue to push for that. Honestly, we could use more folks around the club. It's a really fun place to volunteer. There's a lot of opportunities, mentorship, athletic volunteering, just spending time at the club after school to support. Also, we have $10,000 of scholarship. Every additional dollar we get is extremely important to creating a better situation for all of these scholars. I'm extremely proud to be a part of this organization. I'm extremely proud to be up here with these two gentlemen, and I'm very proud of the progress we're making and that we will continue to make. We have a goal as a team of 500 hours of service next year at the club, in person, boots on the ground. Stretch goal of 1,000 in 2025. Let's make it happen. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And with Jared's enthusiasm, do you think that there's some action going on there with the volunteers? It's awesome. Thank you, Jared, for what you do. And I took special note that they were both Roosevelt grads we were talking about, because guess who is a Roosevelt grad? Okay. We just say go Riders, go Riders. Everyone else doesn't know what a rider is, but we're Rough Riders, named after Teddy. So we'll talk more about that throughout the year and get those shout outs. Thank you very much too. One thing that a lot of Rotarians are not aware of is we built the building that the Rotary Boys and Girls Club operates in. And so the visionaries of people, 70 years ago, knowing how important it would be to have an awesome Boys and Girls Club located right near Garfield High School. It was so grateful that our earlier Rotarians knew the importance of doing that, and it has positively impacted kids for years and years and years. And especially during the pandemic, it was the safety net for so many kids that didn't have food at home, didn't have activities, or were having socialization challenges with the lack of schooling. So it is just an awesome program. We're grateful to have our name on it and have it be something that energetic volunteers like Jared and Jesse and great leadership like Kendrick can impact these kids. So thank you so much. One more applause for them. So I'm happy to welcome as David Owens to the podium. He is a former Seattle 4 Rotarian whose job ended up switching him to another location, but we still have a place in our heart for him, and we allow him to introduce our keynote speaker. David.
Thank you all. It's great to be with you and to be back again. It's a pleasure to have a chance to introduce Brian Baird to you. It's exciting to see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm really glad those online are able to join us today. This club is world famous, and it's world famous for going out of its way to be of service both locally and globally. And I just want you to know, everywhere I go, and people said, have you been in any way involved with Seattle 4? And the answer is yes, I have. I've been a member. And your reputation literally spans the country and it spans the globe. So I want to pass along a thank you from so many of the clubs that you've worked with and the communities you've supported. I wanted to give you a brief bio on Brian and then get him up here because he's the featured speaker. Brian's the founder and chair of the National Museum and Center for Service. He has gathered an impressive array of board and advisory committee members on both coasts. His vision is to engage our nation in the task of elevating and re-energizing community service and volunteerism. His purpose is to better serve and strengthen our communities, America, and our world. Does that vision and purpose sound vaguely familiar to you? It's aligned so well with Rotary. Brian's resume, I'll give you the quick version. It's multifaceted. He served for 12 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing the 3rd District, down in the southwestern tip of our state of Washington. He holds a doctorate degree in clinical psychology from the University of Wyoming. Practiced clinically for 20 years. He's written 3 books. One I've enjoyed is How to Do Congress Better. We could use that book. And then he's also served as a university president and was an advisor to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. So please join me in welcoming Brian Baird to the stage to share his vision for elevating and re-energizing service and volunteerism.
Thank you, Jen. David, thank you for the kind remarks and thanks for your friendship and your service. It's so good to see so many friends here again. Jim Moore, who I've known for a number of years, John Bridges, so many others that are here. And what a pleasure to be with Rotary. I often said when I served in Congress that I wish, and I mean this sincerely, that Congress would start each day with the 4-way pledge. I think it'd take them a few days to just get used to it, to just be quiet and say, am I really doing that now? But it would be very salutary if the Congress would think about, is it fair? Is it the benefit of all? Is it the truth, et cetera? I shuddered a little bit when I saw by my name, long program. Boy, that's a buzzkill. I'm going to try to make it an interesting program, and it'll seem short if I do my job right. One of the things that happened in Congress that I chose to be a neuropsychologist by training. My dad and mom were involved in service forever. And when I would travel the country and the world, I would often say, I don't necessarily, when you go on what's called a CODEL, a congressional delegation, you typically meet with the parliamentarians, members of Congress, sometimes generals, you get a briefing by the CIA, et cetera, et cetera. And I would often say, let me meet with people doing service. And I'll share just one tiny example. In the slums of Cairo, the Coptic Christians live in the slums. And they are there because they can feed pigs on the pork or feed pigs on the garbage, right? Which the Muslims don't do. But they can generate income and livelihood in the garbage. But what happens to the kids? Who takes care of them? Rotary International helped create a school there where children get education. And they do microcredit kind of maneuvers. So they, for example, teach the kids how to make quilts out of pieces of fabric. Well, when you cut a triangle, you learn about the Pythagorean theorem. You learn about a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So they integrate education. And here's the key insight. Everywhere around the world, there are people doing service. And service, I want to really emphasize this. It is fundamental to our national character. De Tocqueville talked about this, as some of you know, back in 1823, Visit America basically said, if somebody's in need, the Americans pull together. Secondly, it's essential to our democracy. It's the key ingredient. We don't talk about it. When we teach civics classes, we talk about how a bill becomes law and the Bill of Rights and all that. Super important. But democracies don't fail because somebody didn't know how many members of the House and Senate there are. They fail because people fail to run and vote based on public service. They fail when someone who's not dedicated to serving others, but to serve itself, uses the democratic process to gain power and then uses that power to undermine the democracy. So service is fundamental to our character, essential to the democracy, and it uplifts us. We are divided right now as a country. We're divided on ethnic lines, we're divided on political lines, we're divided on religious lines, on economic lines. You all know in Rotary, when you're there to help somebody, you don't ask, who'd you vote for in the last election? What's your faith? You say, how can I help? And it brings us together like nothing else does. And all around the world. The other thing I love about service is people from all walks of life can serve. Everybody can serve. Martin Luther King said that, actually. He said, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. Service brings us together while so many other things drive us apart. And you might recognize some familiar faces, or at least one familiar face. All around the world, every day, there are Rotarians doing that. Rotary embodies the spirit of service, as you well know. 118 years of existence as a service organization, 46,000 members worldwide, billions of dollars raised. And yet I'm going to ask you this, I don't think most Americans really know much about Rotary and how much they benefit every single day. There's no, part of the reason for that is right now, and it's strange to think about this, there is no physical place anywhere in our entire country that honors service in all its forms. No museum, no memorial, no monument. If you go to Washington, D.C., I spent a lot of time there. We were just talking about this. You can see lots of memorials to military service, and that's thoroughly appropriate. You can see stuffed dinosaurs. You can see polar bears. You can see spent rocket ships. But where do you go to take your family or your international guests in Washington, D.C. to honor service in all its forms? All its forms. Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, faith-based organizations, government service, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, military service. Finding ways that each person can give. There's not a single place anywhere in the country. It is almost as though the work of service doesn't matter. We have a blank screen when it comes to honoring service. But we can change that if the clicker works. Well, first of all, before I say we can change it, why do we need to change it? These are troubling statistics. Significant declines in the percentage of households who donate to service. Significant declines in the numbers of people who volunteer for service. Only 39%, this is frightening, 39% of the public surveyed trust nonprofits. It's even lower number for those who trust Congress. That'll come as no surprise. But it's disappointing because if you don't trust your institutions, you've got a problem on your hand. And corporate charity, which is so fundamental to our culture and so generous in so many ways. Look at this community right here. Look at Rotary itself, but the Seattle community, only 10% of the people said they trust corporate philanthropy. And when it comes to whether people even understand what nonprofits do, the fact is every single one of us in some way benefits every day from a nonprofit. But only 5% of the people surveyed said they or a family member had benefited any point in the year. So what's the assessment? I almost said conclusion, but it's not the conclusion. It's an assessment of where we need to go. The public is apparently increasingly unaware of, uninvolved in, and often unappreciative of service of not-for-profits and philanthropy in their community. So we can change that. You can't read it, but we can change it. The background was supposed to be dark blue. I don't know what happened in translation, but it was meant to be sort of yellow and blue. Recognize those colors, but it didn't work. So we can change it is what that moving slide says. How? Vision is this: to create a national museum and center for service, a place to be located very near the mall. So when you're visiting the nation's capital, you can learn about all the ways to serve. Imagine if there was a wing of civic service organizations like Rotary, Lions Club, Kiwanis, etc. Imagine if there's, and by the way, to the folks from Boys and Girls Club, thank you for your work. We should feature that in this story. There's a wonderful story about, it's a bit of an aside, but the current director of AmeriCorps is a remarkable man named Michael Smith. Guess where Michael Smith got his start? Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Club, it led to a whole lifetime. And he'll tell you, that was my second home. That's where I found safety, security, support, mentors, friendship, inspiration. He's now the head of AmeriCorps. And doing a remarkable job about that. So we want to highlight that service, faith-based organizations. Can you imagine if you went into a place where people of all faiths got together and said, this is what the Catholics do, this is what people from Jewish faith do, this is what the Sikhs do, the Muslims, etc. All together, this is what unites us. We could have entertainers, sports stars, etc., all united in service. We want to do this by repurposing a signature building near the mall. Don't build something new. It's too complicated, too expensive, but there's a lot of empty office space in DC right now. And so let's move some of the federal building office workers to a nearby office space, take and reuse a building near the mall so that it's right there next to the other museums and places of honor. We want it to be a vibrant, interactive, experiential place, not inanimate objects nailed to a wall. We want it to be something you're hands-on, interactive, experiential, inspiring, uplifting. And one different thing about this, you know, when I go to the galleries, they're marvelous art galleries in DC, as there are here, and they're wonderful. But if I go to the West Gallery or East Gallery, the Hirshhorn in DC, I don't come away saying, by God, I've got to be an impressionist. I come away saying, dang, those fellers sure could paint, but it doesn't cause me to say I want to do something different. In our museum experience, we want to do something different. But here's the other reality. Not everybody can come to DC. So now the question becomes, if we can't bring all the people to the museum, how can we bring the museum to all the people? And it turns out we've got a great model for that. 3 key ingredients. First, every community has organizations and individuals who serve. The tiniest, I grew up in a micro town called Fruita, Colorado. Everybody, there was a volunteer fire department, saved my dad's life when he had a heart attack. The volunteer fire department saved his life. There were scouts, there were faith-based groups, there was Lions, there was Rotary, there was etc. Tiniest town, little league coaches, scoutmasters, etc. Every community has places where you could tell the stories of service. Public libraries, an example of service themselves, are a marvelous place to tell the stories of service, and public schools and colleges and universities. There are places to tell the stories. And here's the key insight. And the intrinsic talent is there. You don't have to spend millions and millions of dollars. For a couple $1,000s, you can create compelling, impactful stories of service in every community in America, every single one. Thinks what that'll do. And by the way, when I said it doesn't have to be super expensive, a picture of a person who serves, along with a story of what they do, can be a mighty compelling thing, especially if you ask questions and you do interactive things with it. So by bringing together service organizations with places to tell the story, using intrinsic talent, you can have every day, everywhere in America, not only people who serve, but the stories of that service being shared. Now, let me emphasize something. I don't think any of you in this room serves in order to get recognition. I know many of you. I know you do it because it's the right thing to do. This is not about meeting your needs to serve. It's about showing what you do as a way to inspire others. We've got young people, people of all ages need to see somebody else can do it, so can I do it. A young man who's in AmeriCorps told me, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So this is not about us patting ourselves on the back. It's showcasing what is the very best so that we can carry on that tradition. And showcasing not just the great man, which is so often what museums feature, but the greatness in every single person. Because as Dr. King said again, anybody can serve. We've got a much different model than a traditional museum. It's not top down. It's not necessarily expert driven. It's certainly not super expensive. It's locally generated, collaborative, co-created, super affordable, transportable, replicable, and enduring because the story of service continues. It's never going to get old. This is not just a document from 3,000 years ago, which might be pretty cool, and there's some amazing ones, but this is what's happening today. Instead of an exhibit that says, ladies and gentlemen, in Auditorium B, we'll show you the same video we've shown for 12 years. We could say in Auditorium B, we're going to have a live link up through technology with doctors and nurses treating people in Ukraine. Now you've got relevance. Now you've got immediacy. In your high schools, imagine, I'm going to take the high school example. This is a long list. You can pick the imagines you want, but I'm going to give you one example. Imagine in high schools, we've all got, no offense to the writers in the room, but every high school I've ever been in, and I've been in hundreds, have the display case, the trophy case, right? With the basketball jersey or whatever. And that was an exciting game 30 years ago. I'm sure, wish I'd have been in there. But there's almost no high school that has an exhibition of service. And the truth is, as much as we admire our athletes, Nancy, thanks for your leadership in that regard and in your own experience. And you've done remarkable things as a servant, as a faith-based servant with the Seattle Storm. But you know what? A lot of people can't be in that athletic case, but they can all serve. The kid in the wheelchair, the kid who's not going to win the chess trophy, the child who's not physically adept, they can all serve in some way, whatever their background. So what if in our high schools and in our colleges, we created exhibitions for service? So kids can say, oh, look, there's somebody like me doing something cool. I want to be there. And as David always reminds me, there need to be on-ramps, not just, oh, let's admire how someone else served. Let's help people connect to how they can serve. So you can say, maybe you take your phone out and you click a QR code or something. This is how I too can get involved. And by the way, there's a big movement to try to say, well, and I'm all for it, Let's get a national year of service from 18 to 24. You've probably heard of that. I think it's fantastic. But one of the most untapped talents is not the 24-year-olds, it's the 64-year-olds. The people who have time on their hands, skills, fixed retirements, they're doing okay. They're not just starting their family, et cetera. Make sure all of those folks serve, but we have to reach them, not on TikTok videos, but in the public libraries, in other spaces, we can reach them. So imagine all the places where we could tell these stories of service. And they're not that hard. Again, a face and a story is incredibly powerful. And David and I went to a place called the Renwick Gallery in DC. One of the more powerful museum exhibits I've experienced was the simplest of things. It was 2 cards. One said, "This is my hope," and "This is my burden." And you were invited, if you chose, to write your hope and your burden on the cards and then post them so others could read. Incredibly impactful things we were reading. The most basic exhibition. We can do that in our own communities in an affordable way. How can we honor somebody who serves? Let's suppose we create a page, an opportunity to create a one-page, not a web page, but a one-page document honoring someone who you know who serves. Think about that for a second. Who would you put? It could be your mother, your sister, your children, your brother, your pastor. And then we collate that through the archives and the Library of Congress, and we create the largest book in the history of the world, the Book of American Service. Can't read it all, but you're glad it's there. So here's the results. You know, John Kennedy said, ask what your country, not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. What we're talking about is making it visible, showing what you can do for your country and connecting to how you can do it. When we do this, we'll increase appreciation of the levels of service in our democracy. We'll inspire people of all ages. We'll get more members in Rotary. We'll get more members in all the other faith-based organizations, more contributions, and more people in need will receive the help and support because people will understand it. They'll say, I understand what's happening at Boys and Girls Clubs. I know the value of the library, etc. So we'll have a greater sense of unity, the divisions. We have this wonderful phrase, we'll learn to respect differences and transcend our divisions because service does that. You're different than me. Great. Let me learn about you. Then let's do something good together. I think there's less hatred. It's pretty hard to hate somebody if you've just been helping out. You know, if there's a big flood or something and you're filling a sandbag, it's like, well, we stopped that flood. Now I need to hate you again because we're from a different political party. You're not going to do that. You're going to go have beer, milkshake, whatever. And you're going to have a bond in some way. And we'll have less loneliness. The Surgeon General a few weeks back was talking about the epidemic of loneliness. You're not lonely when you come to Rotary. You've got fellowship. Not only you got fellowship here, you've got 1.4 million fellowship worldwide. As you all know, anywhere you go, you can find Rotarians. We need that kind of connection again. And last but not least, especially important, we'll have a healthier democracy. So that's our vision. It's a network of interrelated service exhibitions in every single community, large and small, in public places that already exist, telling local stories with local resources in an enduring and inspiring way and connecting people to service, and a signature building in the nation's capital. And the long run, more people benefit, more participation in service, stronger Rotary organizations, more enduring, new crowd of young people coming in every day because they're connected through their schools and other activities. So that's the vision. And I'm so honored to be part of this. By the way, it's almost entirely volunteer. It's really gratifying to have people like David stepping forward. David spends, I don't know how many hundreds of hours on this project. I'm incredibly grateful. And he's one of just a number of a core group of people. So with that, let me hear your ideas for what, you know, not just questions, but what are your ideas? By the way, we've got some great endorsements we're very, very proud of. So I'm opening up the floor here. What are some of your thoughts? Oh, thank you.
I'm going to start. I've got a question from the Zoom chat for you. Right. You got a question from me. From
Oh,
Zoom
sorry.
chat.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I should have acknowledged folks back home. Sorry about that.
Okay. Dorothy has a question. Are there any tech companies donating their services to help you develop the museum?
Not yet, but we would surely welcome it. You know, the power we're kind of a low-tech organization, but the power of taking, for example, a 16-inch laptop. David and I were just at a museum called Planet Word, a marvelous museum in DC. If you just put a story on a 16-inch laptop, set it on a table where somebody can sit in front of it, so they have time, and the person says, "This is who I am," and they tell their story. Part of the ways I got to this, I was in a war zone, and we came out of the war zone, and we were in a cafe at night with some relief workers. And this was really the origin of this whole idea. And I asked people, can you tell me how you got involved in service? There were 8 people, international group. The first woman was in her 60s, and she'd been doing it for years. She said, my first assignment was the killing fields of Cambodia. And that was many years ago. The next person, an African, not African-American, we're so habitually saying this, a gentleman from Africa. He said, I was at the Rwandan genocide. The next person, I was in the tsunami. They had spent their whole life, their whole story was worthy of service. If we can tell those stories, and tech can help us do it. So we would love to have the tech partners, both for the online platform and for the infrastructure.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Good to have you here. I was just back in DC on Monday and went through the whole Smithsonian area. What help have you been able to get from the Smithsonian Institution for an additional building alongside some of the ones that are the museums that are there?
Great question, John. The Smithsonian, I talked to Lonnie Bunch. Lonnie Bunch is the founder and CEO of the African American Museum of History and Culture, and also the secretary of the whole Smithsonian. Brilliant guy, wonderful guy. He couldn't be more gracious. He said, Brian, we have 3 new museums queued up already. Congress has authorized a Women's Museum, a Latin American Museum, and possibly an Asian American Museum. He said, I can hardly keep track of the museums we've already got, let alone new ones. I love the idea, he said. Lonnie's daughter is a frontline ER physician in downtown Chicago. Went there during COVID, if you can imagine what she saw. So he gets it. But he said, I don't have bandwidth or resources right now. That's part of why, John, our approach is more follow sort of maybe the lines of the Holocaust Museum, a private independent museum free of charge, absolutely has to be free, but we'll take an existing building nearby. We'll need congressional authorization for that. We've got some beautiful buildings in mind that are not super well used right now, in my judgment. They might disagree. But so Smithsonian is cheering us on, but not trying, almost asking us not to try to get under their wing right now. Well, this is an interesting thing. Congress has museum fatigue, to be perfectly honest. The process and funding fatigue a little bit. So I've talked to a lot of members. They like the idea, but they've basically said, we've got 3 new big museums queued up. It's part of why we believe by starting local, you actually may have more impact. You know, the fact is there's a lot of museums on the mall called national museums. The truth is there is no national museum. Ours would be the first. It turns out you can call any, you don't have to have Congress to call. You could say the National Thai Museum. They can't stop you, right? This would be a good one. It's my kids, by the way. But the point being, there's no museum that coordinates in a network national way the way we want to. We want to have an open source recipe kind of template model. So we would love more support from Congress. Right now, we've said, look, let's focus on what we can control, which is local. We wouldn't control it, but what we can inspire is the better word. It's great. We're working with Congress, is short answer, and with the Smithsonian, but it's not, we've decided focus on these other efforts. I think will be more powerful.
And I have a right out here, and I know Jesse has one too, so I'll make this very brief. Quickly wondering, in terms of partners that are providing service, I personally believe Olson Kundig creates the best interactive spaces in the world. They are also one of the most expensive architecture firms to contract. They're doing the renditions. Are they going to be a partner in any sort of financial way in cutting their fee and making it more approachable for something like this with such a strong architect?
Great question. Every rendering that you saw of Olson Kundig, the things that looks like we already have a museum, that was done free of charge.
Amazing.
Completely free. We received benefit from K&L Gates to help set up our 501c3. Olson Kundig did all those renderings. That started as just a rendering of an empty building, and they created it to make it look like a museum. Astonishing, astonishing work. And it shows you what the kind of potential is. So Yeah, thank you. It's a great question.
Hey, Brian, I have a question from the chat from Jan Levy. She said that she recently encountered two younger adults, people that are in their 20s, who insisted that they wanted to volunteer with specific committees at a university, but that they insist that their time be paid for. What are your thoughts on how to infuse the spirit of volunteering in younger adults?
Oh, wow. First of all, Jan, hi. Nice to see you. Thanks for the softball question. It's a little bit of a side. David mentioned I'd written 3 books. One of the books is an exciting title, I'll tell you. The Internship Practicum and Field Placement Handbook, a guide for the helping professions. It's not yet a bestseller. Actually, it is a bestseller. It is, as a matter of fact, in its category, it's the bestseller, which is a niche category. But the point is, so I've spent a lot of time around interns, and the challenge is we need to make sure that internship experiences can be accessible to people of lower economic means, because otherwise they're sort of, who can afford the volunteer time? By the same token, my own bias and experience has been, if the choice is between you get a valuable learning experience, but you're not paid for it, versus you can't get the valuable learning experience, I'd rather get it for free. And so, but take the college example. I'll give you this example in college. We work with Campus Compact and National Youth Leadership Council on creating campus level exhibitions. And I asked a group of 40 some universities, where on your campus is there a place to honor the service being done by your students, your alums, your faculty, or your staff? One hand out of 45 went up. And they said, oh, I thought, great, somebody's beat us to the punch. They've got an example. She said, yeah, the hallway outside our office in the basement of a building on the edge of campus. That's where we honor service. Why not in Suzzallo Library? Why not in the beautiful School of Business? Why not have exhibits in the School of Business or the School of Law showing these are ways your graduates, or in the chemistry department, they worked on mRNA, obviously nursing, education. We believe every institution on the campus should have its own service exhibition. And I frankly, back to Jan's question, I think creating those mechanisms where people can volunteer, and by the way, Rotarians and others could come to the campus through Rotaract, et cetera, and say, you want to make a difference? Join Rotary.
Hello. Thank you for giving such an inspiring speech. I have 2 questions. First is, I'm more interested in the creative process. So how did you come up with the idea, or a group of people working with you, or you suddenly woke up one day and say, hey, we should have a service museum? So that's question number 1. Number 2, so what's your take on the 3rd district election?
Oh my gosh. Let me
You
take
know,
the first one first.
The Joe Ken versus Maria. I never know how to pronounce her last name.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. So I really am that's a very interesting race. I don't want to talk politics too much, but Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, very exciting new candidate. I got to know her pretty well in her campaign, was very supportive. And I think that's going to be a tough political challenge, but she may be up to that task to get reelected. It's one of the more, it'll be one of the top 5 targets in the whole country, probably. But back to the creative process. So it's this experience of seeing everywhere in the world people doing astonishing things and no place to recognize that. Here's another example. 3,600, as of 2 years ago, 3,600 frontline healthcare workers had died of COVID. That's more people than died on September 11th. And almost every one of those frontline healthcare workers went to work knowing they could die. They were seeing people die. We didn't yet have a vaccine. They knew they could get it. They still went and they died. Husbands, mothers, daughters, sisters, brothers, not a single place. And we don't want it to be just a stone monument. We want it to go somewhere where you can touch a button and see the story. This is so-and-so. She loved to garden. This is this guy. He was a little league coach. This was the son of whatever. This was the daughter. We want those stories to be told. So as we've evolved, people like David stepped forward and shared their ideas. It's been fun. I've never worked with a better group of people in my life, almost all volunteers. And we just brainstorm. And then we're just voracious consumers of what other museums are doing. How can we do it differently in new ways? How can we adapt these techniques and these experiences. So if you've got ideas, if anybody, by the way, we're all volunteer. If anybody wants to jump in, you're more than welcome. We've got space. So thank you for the question.
All right, I've got one last question
Okay.
coming from the chat. You told you you could say
All
that,
right.
but now I
Yep,
get to say
all
it.
right.
I've got the microphone. And it's so perfect because we have many media professionals, many of which have asked you questions and handled the microphone. How do we get media to repost on service in the community instead of the constant reporting on criminal behavior?
Yeah, well, this is part of the whole point. If all kids, we have some young people, what would you like to see if you had if there were a museum of service? You know what their answer was? Success. They're scared to death of climate change, school shootings, social injustice, etc. They're fed up with the divisions and the negativity. They want something to be better and they want to be part of something being better. So I really think there are instances where there are evening shows on like, this is our Friday hour of good, and that's really great, or a half hour. Those are marvelous. We believe it needs to be more broadly distributed, more consistent, more enduring, more ubiquitous. So the media has an essential role, but we just think we can do this even better if we do it this way. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for your service. David is saying there are cards on your table if you're interested in more. Thanks, Nancy.
Just a second. Well, Brian, we have a tradition here. We have an organization that we're very aligned with, Harvest Against Hunger. And what we do is we give a gift in honor of you to them of 60 portions of food that will help for the feeding insecure. So we're grateful for that. And we also want you to have the chance to come back again and bring a guest to this vibrant group. And we'd love to have you in our midst.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have had a lot of inspiration today just for one meeting, so very, very grateful for all of this. Not wanting to try to be more profound than that, I had to have sort of a fun way of thinking about volunteerism that I could relate to. And so I was thinking, don't ever question the value of volunteers. So we look at a good example of volunteerism. Noah's Ark was built by volunteers. Sometimes professionals don't do so well because professionals made the Titanic. We are adjourned.